Hey folks, so someone requested that I do a rebuttal to the ContraPoints videos about capitalism, and they're called What's Wrong with Capitalism? There are two different videos, part one and part two, and while I am always open to requests, I cannot promise that I will always fulfill the requests. But if you guys ever have a request, feel free to mention it in the comments. Let's check this out.
When you look into the pools of the 9/11 memorial at the World Trade Center, you start to ask yourself questions. Why is the world bad? What did all these people die for?
Well, if she's talking about the World Trade Center attacks, those people died because religious zealots decided to hijack planes and crash them into our beautiful skyscrapers in New York City in an attempt to spread their bullshit version of theocracy.
Well, for freedom, I guess. And American values? But what are those values? What kind of freedom is it that we have?
Well, we don't have enough freedom, that's for damn sure.
The 9/11 memorial shares the World Trade Center site with the largest shopping mall in Manhattan. There's a Forever 21, an Under Armour, a Kate Spade, and a pair of shoes that I want, but they're too expensive and my feet are too big and I'm too tall to wear high heels anyway. Fucking neoliberalism?
Alright, so it's neoliberalism's fault that ContraPoints can't find desirable shoes that fit. Alright.
What even goes on in these big buildings? I've been looking at them all my life, but I've never been inside one. Are these the towers where the ruling lizards gather? Drinking human blood? Licking whipped cream off the interns? What the hell even is this country? Just the same terrible shit copy-pasted all over the goddamn place. Longhorn Steakhouse, Golden Corral, Staples, the Red Lobster, PetSmart, Chipotle.
Yeah, I like a lot of these places. Red Lobster, Chipotle, especially Red Lobster. I make Cheddar Bay biscuits every year for Thanksgiving. I think all these buildings are beautiful. They're all restaurants. They're all establishments that are trying to get you to come in and enjoy a meal in exchange for your money. And this is a lot like those traditionalist conservatives who shit on capitalism because they take a picture of a freeway exit where, you know, there's a McDonald's and a Pizza Hut and 3 gas stations and a Subway restaurant and a bunch of power lines, and oh, it looks so ugly. It's so not aesthetically pleasing. So what we really need to do is get rid of capitalism and go back to the days of Bath, Somerset, and ancient Rome.
Fridays, Dave and Buster's. I guess it's not so bad, as long as
Dave and Buster's kicks ass too.
It kick things up a notch. Yes, I want to add the lava cakes to my order, Domino's. Of course, I want the fucking lava cakes.
What's wrong with capitalism?
I'm gonna put the cake on the pizza. Put
I wouldn't recommend that.
it all in me. Fill me up.
Oh, god damn it. It was so good, but I ate so much I think I'm gonna die. Look what capitalism made me do.
Look what capitalism made me do. Capitalism doesn't make you do anything. In fact, it's the opposite. Capitalism is a society where government protects your individual rights and property rights, your rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property and happiness. It is giving you the choice to live your life as you see fit. Use your mind for your own survival and the pursuit of your own happiness. Now, if you use this freedom to eat greasy pizza and chicken wings to the point where you have a tummy ache, well, then that's on you, you goof. You have plenty of healthy options, presumably. I mean, at least I do, but there's plenty of grocery stores, probably plenty of other options that this character had to eat at instead of eating a pizza and chicken wings in one sitting.
Parts of territory all across.
And of course, Donald Trump, is he the poster boy for capitalism? The current president, pragmatic nationalist is what I consider him, who is opposed to international trade, has been hostile to trade to a certain extent, campaigned on the promise of punishing corporations with tariffs if they dared outsource jobs. Wants to use tariffs to level trade deficits, which is a bullshit concept based on a zero-sum view of economics. And even in his business career, he was a crony. He tried to use bullshit antitrust legislation as a means to beat his competitors with. But apparently he's the poster boy for capitalism. Even his tax cuts. You know, I'm a fan of the tax cuts. But it's a principle. Tax cuts are the government letting you keep more of your own money. But Trump's tax cuts were done in the name of creating jobs.
Political dissent begins with the vaguest feeling that something is wrong, and a lot of people have that feeling. But the problem with vague feelings is they can be channeled in any direction. The same vague angst can drive people to communism or fascism or anything in between.
Well, another problem with vague feelings is they might not always be justified, and especially when it comes to Marxists and fascists, their angst is often very unjustified.
General sense today among young people that we have been lied to, and that sense is perhaps the most acute among middle-class white men, who apparently were promised that they could be millionaires or
Keyword could be millionaires. It's not a guarantee that you'll be a millionaire. You gotta create values that people want to pay for.
Movie gods or rock stars.
By the way, it's okay to not be a millionaire. It's okay to not start your own business and go on Shark Tank and become the next Mark Cuban. Not everyone has to be the richest person. Well, that's impossible. Not everyone can be the richest person in the world, but not everyone has to be filthy rich.
The term special snowflake is used today as a slur against queer teenagers, but it comes from the movie Fight Club, where it refers to a generation of white guys who have become adults only to find...
Yeah, Fight Club, which had a lot of anti-capitalist and nihilistic themes. Of course, based on a book written by Chuck Palahniuk, who's probably made lots of money throughout his life selling books. Fight Club, which ended up becoming a popular movie, a cult phenomenon. And it's really based on reality. Every man in America has delusions like Tyler Durden.
That they're worse off than their fathers, that they don't have glamorous jobs, they don't have girlfriends, and more recently, that even in the escapist world of video games, they're absolute soft.
All right, so people have it worse off than their fathers. How many people under 30, under 35 would trade their life would trade what we have now to go back and live in the 1970s and 1980s? Anyone want to take that deal? In fact, I'll take it a step further. Would you rather be living in today's society, despite its flaws, and work middle class, $50,000, $60,000 a year job or whatever? Or would you rather go back to 1982 and make, I don't know, $100,000 a year? You guys want to trade in the current... I mean, I guess that might be a fun debate, but I wouldn't.
Sovereignty is being challenged. I've devoted half my channel to chronicling the deranged consequences of this situation. Anti-feminism, alpha males, pickup artists, the surreal surge in support for a white ethnic homeland. But till now, I haven't talked about the underlying causes, and it's important to do that because the thing is, the white men aren't even wrong that society is screwing them in some way. It's just that it's screwing everyone else even more. So the masculinist alt-right analysis of society is exactly upside down. Guys, you are not under the thumb of a Jewish feminist plot to turn you into girly soy boy cucks.
I mean, she's right there.
Cultural Marxism did not turn you into placid IKEA consumers. Capitalism did. So what you need to do is stop
Capitalism, that's what's destroying your life.
Scapegoating non-whites, feminists, and trans people, and unite with the rest of us to actually do something about the real enemy, the blood-sucking, goddamn reptiles.
They're gonna get you, folks. The lizards. Now I know she's being sarcastic, okay? Don't, way to miss the joke.
Chapter 1. Capitalism and Spirit. Oh god, I sound like a philosopher. Someone shoot me.
She's not wrong there either. She does sound like a mainstream philosopher.
Remember that Nazi propaganda video where Richard Spencer says that a nation
based on freedom is just another place to go shopping.
A leftist could easily have said that. We think
She's right. There's not much difference between the left and the alt-right. Their differences are merely superficial, and they both have a disdain toward market economies and going shopping. Yeah, freedom means there will be a free market, and you're free to go shopping and buy and produce and make the products you want to sell and buy the products you want to enjoy. Nothing wrong with that.
of leftist analysis as being very materialistic, but there's a spiritual dimension to it too. Much of Karl Marx's early writings are primarily concerned with the
Oh yeah, Karl Marx, because that guy knew what he was talking about.
state of the human soul under capitalism, with the alienation of working not for yourself, but for an employer who appropriates the value of your work, with the fetishism of commodity.
Appropriates the value of your work. Yeah, okay. Well, even if you go and work for someone else, you go to and quote unquote work for an employer, work at someone else's business, you're still working for yourself in a large sense. I mean, you're working for a company, but you are working for your own means. You are working for a paycheck. You are getting paid in exchange for your services and your labor. And in capitalism, you are free to take your services elsewhere if you feel like you're not getting paid enough. You are free to develop new skills if you are unsatisfied.
The investment of inanimate objects with transcendent properties beyond their usefulness, with the system of lies and delusions by which capitalism understands and justifies itself, with fucking
Yeah, because Marx wasn't delusional at all.
Comcast increasing my bill to $70 a month for no fucking reason. No, I don't want a landline. No one under the age of 60 wants a landline. Of course, it's not just Marxists who complain about a capitalist malaise. Fascists and conservatives notice it too.
She's not wrong there either. Fascists and conservatives, today's conservatives, they don't like capitalism either. They pretend to like it. They'll pay lip service to own the left, but as we just saw with the Prager lawsuit and other examples, they are very hostile to free markets.
Only they think the solution is to seek collective meaning in ancient customs, racial
Collective meaning.
chauvinism, or fight clubs. And that shit's not really my scene. I'm really more of a pursuit of individual happiness person.
Oh, you're a pursuit of individual happiness. Well, then you should want capitalism because capitalism is the system that removes coercion and force from your life.
But I think that capitalism,
Or at least tries to punish it and discourage it.
as
We know it is pretty bad at fostering individual happiness. And here's why.
It's the best at fostering individual happiness. But you got to pursue it. You can't just expect it from someone else. That's second-handed. And you'll never be happy if you try to get your happiness, derive your happiness from the productive effort of others. I think at some other point, a point I forgot to address, she described capitalism as we know it. What does she mean by that? Capitalism as we know it. Notice, earlier I clearly defined it by saying that it is a society where government only protects individual rights. But she describes capitalism. What does she mean by that? It's hard to tell what the fuck she means. I'm guessing she means whatever today's mixed economy is, which has a lot of distortions, a lot of government controls. It's not purely capitalist. Far from it. You got a lot of wealth redistribution, socialism in the form of wealth redistribution programs, welfare programs, and yes, I'm including corporate welfare. Oh, you don't ever complain about corporate? Yes, I do. Yes, corporate welfare is the worst. You are stealing money from productive people to reward failure, which only causes distortions. So yes, no corporate welfare, no bailing out Wall Street, no bailing out automotive industries, no subsidizing solar panel companies or Tesla to fight climate change. No subsidizing billionaire sports stadiums. So yes, I'm against that. We also have fascism in the form of business regulations and price controls and whatnot. And yeah, we have elements of capitalism, but we got to be clear about what capitalism is. And capitalism as we know it, if she means the mixed economy, is not capitalism.
Chapter 2. Alienated labor. This Marxist jargon sucks. Let's come up with something new. Chapter 2. Shitty jobs. Why is your job so shitty?
Probably because you're shitty and you have a shitty attitude.
well, probably it's because you work at the
Also, I mean, okay. Under capitalism, a lot of people are probably going to work jobs they don't like from time to time. Jobs that are unfulfilling, jobs that can be miserable. So one of the big criticisms of capitalism is that a lot of people might hate their jobs. In what society is everyone just happy at their job and no one's complaining?
Comcast customer service call center, and you spend your day dealing with whiny, entitled white bitches who don't understand that you're just a lackey without any actual power. And the system is organized so that people with no power just have to pointlessly shout at each other. You don't have any stake in the profit of Comcast as a company, so you don't really have any reason to give a shit about the success of the corporate machine in which you are a gear. The CEO makes $36 million a year, while you make $14 an hour, which means that a lot of the value of the work you're doing doesn't get paid to you, but
All right, well, if you want stake in the company, here's a thought. Buy some stock in the company. Buy some stock in Comcast. You know, I've made this point before, but a lot of people on the left, they bitch and moan, oh, the corporations, they exploit the workers, and all they care about is profits and money and pleasing the shareholder. Yeah, okay. Go buy some stock. If that's what you think of a corporation, go buy stock in that company and make some money. What are you guys doing with your life? And she was complaining about the CEO, the Comcast CEO, which I looked this up. Depending on the year and how you look at it, the CEO of Comcast does make between $30 and $40 million a year. A lot of that is stock options and whatnot, but let's just take it at face value. $36 million a year. Let's bring out the calculator. I looked it up. Comcast has 184,000 employees. So let's take that 36 million, divide it by 184,000 employees. We're just going to assume the CEO is just going to work for free, okay? And every worker, every employee at Comcast would get a whopping $195 for the entire year. How does that sound, folks? That sound good to everyone? We're going to make the CEO... And yeah, CEOs get paid a lot because good business executives are really hard to come by.
You're goddamn right.
Goes straight up the chain of command and into the pockets of the chief lizards. The ruthless hierarchical
Yeah, stockholders are just lizards.
structure of the company means that you're competing against your fellow employees for a promotion, or even to not be laid off. And if that happens, you'll end up competing against other unemployed people for another shitty job.
I mean, I've worked at call centers before that she just described, the Comcast. Actually, I worked from home. It was great. It didn't pay the best, but hey, I got to show up to work naked sometimes, which I did because I could. And actually, you know, there's a lot of shit about call center work, and, you know, I only worked one call center job, so I don't know if it's the same anywhere, but a lot of times my job was rewarding. A lot of times I had to deal with ungrateful pieces of shit, but other times, if I really helped a customer, if I got a customer that was really afraid that their issue wasn't going to get resolved and I resolved it, they were really thankful. I made their day. It felt great. It felt fulfilling for the 1.5 to 2 years that I did the job. I mean, I've worked many jobs. I'm sure many of you viewers out home, do you ever get the sense that you and your coworkers are just all competing cutthroat, trying to get that promotion? All you guys are just stuck at that company forever and ever, and you guys are all looking to knife each other in the back trying to get a promotion?
As a concrete lifter, or a mud mule, or maybe even a coffee shop MacBook person.
Again, in what society do people not have to work jobs that suck or that they don't hate?
This means it's difficult to even experience companionship with the other people in your shitty situation, because you're all being pitted against each other by the goddamn reptiles. And it gets even worse. You could
I mean, yeah, if that's your perspective, then you're not going to be happy.
be employed by new age reptiles who force you to
I always thought Mark Cuban had a good philosophy at viewing jobs. He always, in his book, How to Win at the Sport of Business, he would say that he would view jobs as an opportunity to get paid to learn new skills and to learn new things. And that's how he became a good computer salesman, was when he got a job as a computer salesman, and he apparently would take home all of the manuals at his new job and he would memorize them so that when it came time to sell computers, he could answer any question a customer had. And he became the best salesman at his company.
participate in team building exercises, company scavenger hunts, mandatory fun, which means that not only do you have a shitty, oppressive job, but you're not even allowed the basic pleasure of openly hating your life. You have to
See, she just openly hates her life. That's her biggest complaint about capitalism is you might hate your job and not be allowed to express it while you're at work.
constantly pretend that you're having fun, all for the sake of maintaining the overlord's comfortable delusion that he's not your overlord. These lizards are smart, and they keep coming up with more elaborate ways to lie to you. If you work for Uber, they won't even be honest about the fact that you're their employee. They'll call you an independent contractor.
Yeah, they use that classification to get around bullshit labor laws.
You get to be your own boss and set your own hours. You only have to take out the initial loan, buy the car, pay the insurance, pay for the cleaning, take on all the risk, and give Uber 25% without getting a guaranteed wage, benefits, paid leave, or pension.
Yeah, it's a business model that's based on supply and demand. If there's no demand from people who need to get from point A to point B, well, then you're not working. How can you expect to make money when people aren't buying your service? Also, I'm pretty sure rideshare companies like Uber, they're mainly designed at people who already have cars. I know they had financing programs and partnerships with automobiles to buy or lease cars, but I would highly discourage that. Although I have heard some success stories, heard some horror stories too about doing that. But yeah, maybe it's not a good idea to buy a car if you're just looking to drive Uber. Uber should probably be treated. I know some people who have made a good living on being full-time Uber drivers. You have to hustle. You have to be really good at what you do. But a lot of people just use it as a side gig or a transition job until they find something more stable. And yeah, as far as the commission thing goes, Uber still has not made a profit. And maybe ContraPoints will get her way one of these days. Maybe Uber, because it's not profitable yet, maybe it will collapse in on itself, and then we'll have to go without it again. Of course, this ignores all the people who now have more options for transportation, people who can't afford a car but use Uber to get around. I know people who have sold their cars and just went with Uber, which might be economical for some people. If you're spending $500 a month on a car payment, insurance, gas, maintenance, and whatnot, it might be worth it to sell your car and then just Uber all over the place. And that has the added benefit of you can get work done if you don't have to focus on the road and whatnot. So Uber has made life better for a lot of people, but yeah, apparently ContraPoints is not a fan.
So much better than being an old-fashioned employee, right? No, please.
Well, you don't like it when people are employees anyway at companies like Comcast, so what the fuck is the difference?
Don't transfer me to the billing department. They already transferred me here. Chapter 3. Advertising. Is it pretentious to use?
Oh no, advertising, guys! Woo! Not commercials.
Chapters in a YouTube video? What if each section is named after an episode in the Odyssey? If you've lived your life in America, you've spent every day since birth assailed from all directions by propaganda campaigns for cereals and cigarettes and sugar snacks.
Well, cigarettes are illegal on broadcast television from what I know. And Michael Jordan, yeah, you know what Michael Jordan endorsements got us? Got us Space Jam.
Come on and slam, and welcome to the jam.
A cinema classic, because Michael Jordan was doing Nike commercials with the Looney Tunes and someone had the brilliant idea of making a movie about it. So you can think advertising for Space Jam.
And now you can't get no satisfaction. Jesus, people have been complaining about advertising so long it's come to seem like a basic feature of the human condition. But it's not a basic feature of the human condition. It's a situation particular to life under capitalism. I mean, North Korea is a dystopian shithole, but at least the train station isn't cluttered up with
Oh yeah, what a silver lining. North Korea sucks, but at least they don't have ads in their dumbass train station.
advertisements for... Oh. So many fans.
ContraPoints is a tanky confirmed. A neoliberal tanky.
The purpose of advertising is to manufacture desires, which brands across the world spend nearly
manufacture desires. Or maybe it's just companies trying to look for customers, trying to sell their product to people who might enjoy their product.
$500 billion a year doing. The ubiquity and apparent effectiveness of advertising seems to contradict one of the fundamental assumptions of capitalist society, namely that we're all autonomous individuals making rational choices in pursuit of our own well-being.
Well, we're not autonomous individuals. We all have reason and free will, and you should use your mind to make decisions, especially when it comes to advertising. She makes it sound like humans are all these dumb oafs whose minds are too vulnerable that they'll just they'll just buy whatever products are marketed towards them on TV or at the subway station or on a website, on social media. I mean, you, the viewer at home, you're probably bombarded with advertisements every day from companies that you'll never shop at. Come to fucking YouTube. Half the ads are for companies like Wix and Squarespace. Have you guys ever used Wix or Squarespace? How many of you guys have honestly used Wix after clicking on a YouTube video? Mike Bloomberg, all you Bernie bros out there, when you see an ad for Mike Bloomberg, are you just like, oh, Mike Bloomberg, good now. I like Mike Bloomberg.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, and I approve this message.
Advertising uses a lot of rhetorical strategies that are not very rational. For instance,
she's right there. A lot of advertisers. I took a class. Not that I'm an expert, but yeah, in advertising, they teach you that you usually want a good ad has at least one rational and one emotional appeal. Rational appeals are stuff like price, cost, reliability of the product, and whatnot. Emotional appeals are things like sex appeal, laughter, romance, luxury, which she's about to get into.
Randomly correlating the product with sexual
Yeah, how many of you guys see this Lexus ad and then just go out and buy a Lexus?
desire, generating new insecurities the product promises to alleviate, associating the product with social status, associating the product with random famous people, associating the product with degenerate decadence, associating the product with progressive
Yeah, I remember that commercial got mocked into oblivion, the Kylie Jenner or Kendall Jenner Pepsi commercial.
Social movements. Associating the product.
I can't tell the Jenners apart. I really don't give a shit.
With communist revolution, gazing longingly at dreamy Argentinian philosophy professors. Join the clone army. Completely original lighting. Gay orgies. Love cannot survive without diamonds. Is this rational? Does it help people make genuine decisions about their own best interests? Of course not. The goal of
Well, yeah, that's up to people to make the best decisions for their life.
advertising is not to satisfy the pre-existing needs that people have, it's to endlessly create new needs. And that's a lot to keep up with, and it takes...
Yeah, I think Steve Jobs, I mean, for some products that might be true. Steve Jobs I think he said this. When it came to the iPhone, he came up with a product that people didn't know that they needed. And now, that was in 2006. Now most people have a smartphone. And it's great.
It takes a lot of stamina, which is why it's a good thing I discovered Vitalomax Plus. Every evening before I start writing or shooting a video, I insert 2 Vitalomax Plus suppositories for a sustainable blast of power with all natural ginseng and opium extracts.
This reminds me of all the podcasts I listen to that have Blue Chew boner pills advertising the podcast. Still haven't bought Blue Chew, even though I think it's free for first-time customers.
Max Plus gives me the reckless euphoria.
But what do I know? I'm just a dumb consumer that's susceptible to all advertising.
The difference to pain that I need to get it in. I start with a couple dozen oysters, eat some Molly, maybe hit a couple animals, and I take my Vitalomax Plus and I'm ready to rip it open. Vitalomax for bottoms. Consumer society is all about goddamn lizards inventing desires, which they implant in your brain through advertising. Then, they sell you the product that fulfills the desire that they invented, irrespective of whether the fulfillment of the desire actually contributes to your well-being in any way. So what we have is a...
Yeah, and sometimes you might buy products that turn out that you might not be happy with. They don't make your life better. That might happen from time to time. You might order a new pizza topping that you find disgusting. Or maybe you buy a car because of the fuel mileage, but then you realize you don't like driving a 4-cylinder car.
Society built not around meeting basic human needs or maximizing human happiness, but around the extravagant profits of powerful reptiles who tell you what to want and then sell it to you. And this would be a grim...
They tell you what to want? No, it's up for you to decide what you want.
State of affairs in any...
Again, so the hatred of capitalism is ultimately derives from a low view of humanity, a very pessimistic view of humanity. And you see it right here. She thinks that people are too dumb to make decisions and that they're all just too susceptible to advertising.
Circumstances, but it's especially egregious in a country where many of the basic needs are not met. On the one hand, we have 40
So now she knows what's best for everyone. She knows what everyone needs.
million people living in this country with medical debt, spiraling tuition costs leading college students to take out loans they may never escape, more than 500,000 homeless people, and 13 million children who have to go to school.
All right, so the first three, rising medical costs, medical debt, student loan debt. This is capitalism's fault. I just did that whole video responding to John Oliver's Medicare for All video, explaining why how government intervention is largely responsible for high costs of health care and health insurance and medicine, very regulated. I mean, the federal government alone, between Medicare and Medicaid, spends $900 billion to $1 trillion annually subsidizing health care. This is capitalism's fault. FDA regulates drugs out of the market. Oh, that's capitalism's fault. And then with schools is probably the most controlled industry by government in America. The federal Department of Education, I think, spends $60 billion plus a year on education. The student loan issue, a lot of the student loans are backed up by the government and regulated by the government, by the federal government. When it comes to K through 12 public education, that's largely funded by the state and local governments. And according to Steve Ballmer's USA Facts website, I think the states combined spend nearly $1 trillion annually on public K through 12 education. But again, it's all capitalism's fault that education sucks and that people have student loan problems. And then, oh yeah, she also mentioned housing. A lot of that is in California. You know, AOC just made a big fuss about this. So many workers make under $60,000 a year. You can't get by with that in New York City. Yeah, no shit, because they tax the fuck out of everything in New York City. And regulations, at least in California, I'm not as astute on New York, but in California, barely any housing has been built over the last few decades because local and state regulations prohibit the building of new housing. And then we wonder why, you know, we have a housing shortage and people are on the streets. California has high taxes. But again, it's all capitalism's fault.
Hungry. And on the other hand, we apparently have the resource.
By the way, who's going hungry? How many people? I mean, I thought obesity was the big epidemic. Food's cheaper than ever. I mean, she started this video with by talking about Domino's. Oh no, I ate this whole Domino's by myself and I feel like shit. I just got an offer today, Domino's. I can walk to my local Domino's right now and get 2 medium pizzas, which I think it'd probably be 5,000 calories worth of food for $6 a piece. Get a day's worth of food for what? An hour and a half work on a minimum wage job?
Is to mass produce $400 juice packet squeezing machines and $300 luxury ice cubes, and there were apparently Americans.
Yeah, I mean, this is a dumb point because you could really make this argument about anything. Again, this is just a low pessimistic view on humanity. Okay, in capitalism, some people are going to make and buy shit that you think is stupid that people don't need. You can make that case about video games. You can make that case about anime porn, anime, My Little Pony, Insane Clown Posse, Gathering of the Juggalos, Star Wars. It's like those memes I've talked about before, where it's a bunch of people having fun at a football game or dressing up like stormtroopers and Wookiees to go see the new Star Wars movie, line up around the block. But then the meme says, imagine if people were this passionate about shit that actually matters. Okay, you're basically saying that people shouldn't be allowed to have fun then. People shouldn't be allowed to enjoy their life.
Who are willing to spend $50 million on Barnett Newman paintings. I mean, it's a fine painting. It's got a lot of great red on it.
Well, I mean, you could look at it as an artist managed to convince some dumb, rich dumbass. Now I sound redundant. They convinced some rich asshole to give them $50 million in exchange for a red canvas.
Is it really worth the cost of feeding every homeless person in America for 2 weeks? Is this what an efficient economy looks like? If
Like she gives a shit about efficiency.
GDP is your only measure of efficiency, then maybe. But shouldn't the economy serve humanity rather than the other way around?
No. In a free market, your duty, I shouldn't say duty, but your responsibility is to serve yourself by being productive and trading your productive values and effort on the free market in exchange for money, which you can use to survive and pursue other values in your life. The economy is not supposed to. What does she think the economy is? The economy is individual humans producing and trading and consuming. And she's saying, all of the actors in this economy, they just got to serve humanity. Remember, folks, anyone who speaks in terms of masters and slaves intends for you to be the slave and them to be the master.
Millions of people are struggling under the weight of student debt, underemployment, and outrageous medical costs, then who gives a
Largely a result of government intervention in the economy.
shit how many golden donuts we can produce?
What do I do with the gold on my fingers?
Canto 4, Message to the Rich. Alright, you filthy goddamn reptiles, listen up. I have a pretty good barometer for internet politics, which is to say, politics. I mean, I noticed the alt-right thing pretty early. You can assign as much or as little significance to that as you choose. But what I'm picking up at the moment is that people are getting fucking mad. And they're starting to get mad specifically at you, the rich. And you don't just have to trust my intuitions here. Recent polling data shows that a majority of adults under the age of 30 do not support capitalism.
Well, that doesn't mean they're right.
And almost a third support socialism. This is not the 80s anymore. You can't continue to get richer and richer while the rest of the country is underemployed, in debt, and unable to afford healthcare. What you're doing has been tried before, and it doesn't end well. You can't just stroll around town dressed like this and live in houses like this when there are millions of peasants who don't have enough to eat. They
will eventually.
That's what we're at. We're in the days of the French Revolution. Is that what happened in France? They just had laissez-faire capitalism, and it resulted in the French Revolution. Is that what happened? No, now there was a legitimate reason to hate the so-called rich in France because it was a fucking monarchy that treated their people like peasants and robbed from them to build monuments like Versailles while the population was starving. Is that the case in America? You know, what was it, 1700s France? People barely could get their hands on any bread, and you can go to your local store, probably get a whole loaf for $1 to $3. Or as I mentioned earlier at Domino's, you can get two pizzas for $6 a piece. And that's with the mixed economy. That's with all the problems and baggage of distortions. But apparently we're in the days of the French Revolution. Because everyone remembers leading up to the French Revolution, that was the beacon of laissez-faire capitalism.
try to cut your heads off. And judging by the mood I'm picking up on social media...
By the way, how did that turn out, the French Revolution? Okay, it got rid of the monarchy, eventually resulted in a secular dictatorship, which collapsed and led to the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte. Good job, France.
Right now, if you don't fix some shit and make life better for the masses, they are gonna cut your fucking heads off. I mean, they won't
So it's the rich's responsibility to make life better for other people.
actually cut your heads off, but they will try, and you'll have to deploy militarized police, and you will crush them ruthlessly, but it's gonna be a whole thing. Bad for profits, and just all around a real inconvenience.
She is right. War is bad for profits.
For you. Nosy humanitarians will butt their heads in, and they're gonna make things awkward. The point is, shit cannot continue the way it's going.
She's right there. It can't continue. We don't have enough capitalism. A mixed economy is ultimately unsustainable in the long term, and we should be moving toward more capitalism, more freedom in the economy.
Something is gonna have to change, and we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The choice is up to you.
Yeah, sounds like a threat. Anyway, the rest of this part 1 video is mostly ContraPoints having a dialogue with some Antifa communist character she created. Look at that shit. She's even wearing a hammer and sickle button. What the fuck? A dialogue where they discuss which is the best way to end capitalism, which I interpret as a satirization of a long-standing debate on the so-called left, whether to end capitalism through a violent revolution or to end capitalism through democratic means. So regardless of any criticism that ContraPoints might have about capitalism or the modern mixed economy that ContraPoints calls capitalism, it's pretty clear that ContraPoints thinks that capitalism needs to go.
Yeah, that.
Alright, and now we're moving on to part 2 of What is Wrong with Capitalism by ContraPoints. In the last video, what's wrong with capitalism? Advertising, which I don't really see as a problem. We also have people might work shitty jobs from time to time, which happens in non-capitalist societies. We have a lot of problems in today's mixed economy as a result of government intervention, so it's dishonest, if not ignorant, to blame it on capitalism. But let's move on to part 2.
I like stuff. I like this, and I like this, and I like this. I like stuff, and I want more stuff.
My child, hearken to my voice. It is I, Socrates.
Oh no. What do you want?
I haven't seen you at the symposium of late.
Well, yeah, because you kind of hate women, and it was getting me down.
My child, without my guidance, you have become a slave to mere appetite. Have you forgotten what I've taught you about the true meaning of happiness, the rational contemplation of truth and justice?
Look, I tried that, and honestly, I don't think it's really my thing. I'm a dum-dum, and I like shiny things.
Say that again.
Ah, but my child, these are pleasures for the pigs. Happiness can only be acquired through the contemplation of beauty itself, perfectly exemplified in the supple bodies of young boys.
Okay, thank you for your feedback. We'll take that into consideration. Ugh, Greeks. Look, we all have wants.
Happiness can only come through what is essential for your survival and achieving self-esteem.
Needs, desires, and we all want happiness. But happiness, what does that word even mean? I'm just a dum-dum who likes shiny things, and these are questions really better left to the philosophers.
Since ContraPoints is looking to the philosophers on the issue of happiness, and because I gave an unsatisfactory answer just now, how about we look to the legendary philosopher Ayn Rand on the issue of happiness? Happiness is that state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievement of one's values. If a man values productive work, his happiness is the measure of his success in the service of his life. But if a man values destruction like a sadist, or self-torture like a masochist, or a life beyond the grave like a mystic, or mindless kicks like the driver of a hot rod car, his alleged happiness is the measure of his success in the service of his own destruction. Additionally, happiness is a state of non-contradictory joy, a joy without penalty or guilt. A joy that does not clash with any of your values and does not work for your own destruction. Happiness is possible only to a rational man, the man who desires nothing but rational goals, seeks nothing but rational values, and finds joy in nothing but rational actions. For more on this topic, I suggest reading the essay The Objectivist Ethics, which can be found in Ayn Rand's book, The Virtue of Selfishness, or check out the chapter on happiness in Leonard Peikoff's book, Objectivism, The Philosophy of Ayn Rand.
Ayn Rand, Ayn Rand, Ayn Rand!
Which is why I'm not going to present my original ideas in this video. Instead, I will be interpreting one of the most influential works of anti-capitalist philosophy ever produced, a series in multiple volumes that examines deeply the concept of the fetishism of the commodity. I am, of course, talking about Worth It, a series on BuzzFeed Video about 3 men who are younger than me who travel the world and try different foods that cost different amounts of money, and then say whether it was worth it. In each episode, they taste a type of food at 3 different restaurants at 3 drastically different price points to find out which one is the most worth it. For example, they compare a $2 pizza to a $2,000 pizza that's made of gold, and a $1 ice cream to a $1,000 ice cream that's made of gold, and a $1 bagel to a $1,000 bagel.
Who the fuck cares?
That's made of gold. It is a lot of gold.
What do I do with the gold on my fingers?
A ganjapreneur.
Now, to the untrained eye, Worth It may seem like insipid YouTube click fodder, but we intellectuals, well, we have a taste for insights that penetrate a little deeper. We like to take it all in. The Worth It boys, Andrew, Adam, Steven, these are not mere content creators, mere actors, dancing monkeys performing for ad revenue. They're philosophers, spiritual leaders even, and what they've accomplished on YouTube, quite honestly, far surpasses the combined insights of Marx, Engels, Lenin, Sarge, Trotsky, Luxemburg.
Oh, so these are her intellectual heroes, huh?
Gramsci, Lukács, Zarathustra, and even our dear bread mom, Kropotkin. I've of course read each of these great thinkers' complete works many, many times. But I always come away dissatisfied, and I find myself returning yet again to the unparalleled masterworks of Andrew, Adam, and Steve. See, each episode of Worth It poses to the viewer a fundamental question. Is it worth it? We may never know. Take, for instance, the case of the...
I mean, that's up for people to decide.
$2 pizza versus the $2,000.
I mean, I paid $2 for that pizza. Usually a pizza that size on Hollywood Boulevard usually is at least $5. That's a good deal. But this, what, is that 24 karat gold? It's a $2,000 pizza? There's no pizza I'd spend $2,000 on.
Gold pizza. Which is the better deal? I mean, how would we even be?
I mean, what do you value more, a pizza or $2,000?
Begin to answer such a perplexing riddle. Well, according to Karl Marx, the value of a commodity must be understood in two ways. On the one hand, there's the use value, the commodity's capacity to satisfy some human need. And on the other hand, there is the exchange value, the quantity determining the ratio by which a commodity is exchangeable with every other commodity, deriving from objectified labor over time and expressed in terms of price. But let's not oversimplify things. Clearly, Andrew, Adam, and Steve are inviting us, the viewers of Worth It, to understand the use value exchange value dichotomy not as a mere hierarchical binary, but as a sort of Deleuzian rhizome, a non-arborescent multiplicity with as many sinuous interconnections as the truffles on the pizza itself. Am I making myself clear?
You're making this way too fucking complicated, that's for sure.
I'm not.
It's almost as if the philosophers are simply
When you buy something, you decide if you want the thing more than the money in your pocket. It's really that fucking simple.
burdening me with jargon and not actually helping me think through this any better. So let's throw philosophy in the trash and start.
Yes, throw all the philosophy you've ever learned in the trash.
We're from the beginning.
Please.
Fuck this. I like stuff, and I like shiny things. Now that's something everyone can understand, so let's take that as the first axiom of the economic theory I'll be developing in this video. So, given that I like stuff and I like shiny things, let's return to the question. Is a $2,000 pizza worth it?
No.
Well, it is covered in gold.
But if someone wants to spend $2,000 on and to eat a gold pizza, then whatever. That's their business. I really don't care.
Gold, and gold is shiny, so I do like that. But the pizza itself...
Again, you can play this with many different things. A lot of people spend thousands of dollars to go to concerts, music festivals in the desert. What is it called? You know, what's the big one called? Coachella, Burning Man, whatever they're called these days. I don't really care. I know people who spend hundreds, sometimes over $1,000 every year going to music festivals. Makes them happy, brings them joy in life. Not my cup of tea. I'd rather keep the money in my pocket and spend it on things that make me happy.
Seems kinda gross. It's got squid ink dough smeared with foie gras, Stilton cheese, black truffles, gold flakes, and caviar.
I mean, I know people who like to spend $100 on a steak. I'm not a big steak guy. I think steak alone as itself is a really overrated dish. Steak is great as an addition to food like nachos or quesadilla or a burrito. But yeah, I'm not going to spend $100 on a steak. I'd rather buy that, spend that on a share of Comcast.
Flavors are overwhelming, and they
Put that money to productive use, baby.
Don't make any sense together. The only thing they have in common is being really expensive. It's like the culinary equivalent of Donald Trump's apartment. But Andrew and Steven sit there with New York's financial district for a backdrop, and they try to pretend that the pizza doesn't taste like golden shit.
I'm honestly speechless. I feel weird.
Is it the gold?
I just paid $250. I feel kind of like I'm committing a crime.
And that's what $1,250 looks like.
There's this kind of sadness that
Who the fuck cares?
sets in as they realize that the $2,000 pizza isn't worth it at all, and they start to feel almost like they've done something immoral. It's a feeling I've had many times myself.
Yeah, I mean, you could make an argument that wasting money on stupid shit is immoral because you could be using it on something else that'll make you happy. But again, sometimes that's just risk and reward, and you never know until you try.
For spending too much money on some gilded piece of trash in a vain attempt to fill the hollow in my soul. Is there a name for that feeling? Well, I like to call it fucking neoliberalism. In a post-scarcity luxury communist utopia, a bad pizza
Communist utopia.
covered in gold would just be a bad pizza covered in gold. You might be mad at the chef for making a disappointing pizza, but you probably wouldn't be overcome with feelings of emptiness and guilt. To fully understand why a $2,000 pizza is not worth it, you have to understand it in a context of capitalism. The price, $2,000, tells you the exchange value of the pizza, and if you live in America, you have an instinctive sense for what that means, because you know all the other things you could buy with $2,000. For a lot of people, $2,000 would buy a few months of food, or healthcare, or golden nails. And there's a lot of families who sit around the kitchen table every evening worrying about...
Yeah, look at her virtue signaling while she spends a lot of money on, fur coats, whatever the hell that thing is. Golden nails, as she just said, the mannequin heads, all of the props for this satire video.
About how they're going to afford golden nails. And it's that awareness that makes the shitty $2,000 pizza seem not just aesthetically disappointing, but almost obscene or even immoral. But of course, to call it immoral is actually to misidentify the real problem. So it's not like those shitty YouTube comments that go, "Pizzas in Africa could have eaten those children, how dare you?" Because the problem isn't that Andrew Adam...
By the way, poverty is man's default natural state. Not that poverty is good. People should work to alleviate poverty. But this idea that, yeah, you come into this world and you're owed a certain standard of living is pretty ridiculous.
Steven are bad people for buying an expensive flatbread smeared with gilded cream cheese. The problem is our economy fundamentally operates in a way that makes inevitable these repulsive juxtapositions of scarcity and abundance. That's why I don't really...
Well, the economy is definitely really distorted because the fucking government controls the money supply, distorting everything in the economy and making it difficult to assess what value is in the first place. Which is a big reason why, since the establishment of the Federal Reserve, the American economy is prone to booms and busts and distortions and recessions and shit.
I agree with the philosopher Peter Singer, who has this idea that many of the world's problems could be solved if privileged American college students would just become hedge fund managers and donate most of their income to buying mosquito nets in the Congo. I mean, sure, that would probably help with certain situations, but it's not going to change the fact that the global economy is structured around cheap, exploited labor at the bottom and $2,000 pizzas at the top. Another way to approach this issue might be to ask,
cheap exploited labor.
Who are the goddamn reptiles? Well, they're certainly not the Jews.
Again, isn't it amazing that I know she denounced Mao Zedong already, but when the communists took over China, they tried socialism really hard for a few decades, and it just resulted in murder and famine and shit. And then after Mao Zedong dies, the Communist Party in China pragmatically decided to allow for some free enterprise. And some corporations brought some factories and sweatshops to China. And millions of Chinese were given the option, hey, do you guys want to go back to communism, or do you want to go work for these greedy corporations and these factories for long hours and little pay? And they said, yeah, let's go get jobs. It sure beats the fuck out of communism.
To be clear, get everyone on the same page, that I'm not blaming the Jews for anything. Except, cucking the white race. But to be fair, someone had to cuck them. The white race has really been getting on my nerves lately. So the lizards are not the Jews. They're not reptilians from Alpha Draconis. They're not Freemasons or globalists or the gay agenda. But the key insight is that they're not even really the capitalists. The lizards are capital itself. And what does that mean? Well, I don't know, but it does make me sound like I've read a lot of Marx, doesn't it? What I'm trying to say is that the problems with our economy are not just the product of greed or some other personal moral defect of the wealthy. Of course, some capitalists are terrible people, but some probably aren't. And either way, the virtues or vices of the rich are sort of beside.
All right, yeah, everyone's problematic, and there's no such thing as a virtuous billionaire.
Point. So the real point of the golden pizza is that it's emblematic of the fact that the extreme economic inequalities of our society are laughably unjustifiable. If I were to translate the meaning of the golden pizza into an argument, it would go something like this. Capitalism as we know it is a defective...
Capitalism as we know it. What the fuck does she mean by capitalism as we know it? Pretty convenient to be vague on this issue when you just say capitalism as we know it. I defined it at the beginning of the video. Again, society where government protects individual rights and property rights. And I don't know what she means by capitalism as we know it. Does she mean the mixed economy? Capitalism as we know it. If she's talking about the modern mixed economy, it's what it is, a mixed economy, and we should be moving toward capitalism, not away from it.
Economic system, because although it's good at creating large amounts of wealth, it distributes that wealth in an incredibly inefficient way, where efficiency is understood not as the capacity to maximize total wealth, but as the capacity to maximize human happiness. Now I need to explain what I mean.
Well, again, happiness cannot be derived second-handed. Happiness has to be earned on an individual level.
About happiness. Here's a question.
And yeah, happiness is not all about making lots and lots of money and the most money. That's up for you to decide what values you want to pursue.
Should the economy serve humanity, or should humanity serve the economy? It seems obvious to me that the economy should serve humanity. So what I look for in a good economic system is that it produces the most happiness for the people who are a part of it. So if you're willing to go along...
Again, someone can't produce happiness for you. Yeah, you can maybe get some nice toys and gadgets to distract you for a while, but if you're not being productive, if you're not putting your mind to something toward a certain purpose that you value, then you're just living a life full of evasion and distraction.
Along with this, the first question we should ask.
This is why a lot of people who win the lottery end up going bankrupt and hating their fucking life.
Does having more wealth make people happier? And we actually have data about that, at least within the context of our own economic system. And the data shows that more income does lead to more happiness up to a certain point. But the happiness benefit of increased income plateaus somewhere between $65,000 and $95,000 a year.
Yeah, well, that doesn't give you the right to decide how much they're allowed to make or redistribute their money.
One interpretation of the reason why happiness increases up to the threshold is that at lower income levels, more income means less stress about paying rent or mortgages or medical bills or college tuition. But once you pass the threshold, more income basically just translates into more disappointing golden pizzas. If that interpretation is correct, then the current income distribution seems really irrational, at least if the goal is to maximize happiness. The income distribution in the United States is skewed toward the upper extreme, so that the national median...
It's amazing she said in part one, I'm all about pursuing individual happiness. All right, well, if happiness is pursued at an individual level, how can you do it second-handed?
Income is around $72,000, right in the plateau zone, but the national median...
She seems awfully concerned with the happiness of others and trying to achieve it on their behalf.
Income is around $59,000, significantly below it. Furthermore, 1% of the population are making more than $389,000 a year, several times the peak happiness threshold. So at least to my naive eyes, what it looks like is...
So she knows happiness, what makes you happy better than you do.
That millions of people in this country don't have enough money to securely afford food, housing, education, and healthcare, while a few million others are like constantly gorging themselves on golden pizzas or something. But I'm guessing it's even worse than that, because it's not just that some people don't have enough money to meet all of their needs, it's that they have to be poor while other people are rich. And since people compare themselves to others, that leads to all kinds.
Well, just because people compare themselves to others doesn't mean that it's right to compare yourself to others. You should only compare yourself against yourself and your past self and by your own standards. Yeah, if you're always going to be comparing yourself to giants like Michael Jordan or Boss Bezos, then yeah, you're probably not going to be happy unless you match their greatness, which few people can do.
Of additional anxieties and resentments and social tensions. There's a study of capuchin monkeys that shows if you reward one monkey for a task with a delicious grape and a monkey in the adjacent cage with a shitty cucumber, the monkey who gets the cucumber loses his shit. And if you do this to humans for long enough, they...
Oh, so you see that, folks? We're just as dumb as chimps. Again, the hatred of capitalism begins with a low view of humanity.
Start building guillotines. But that's just how it looks to me. I could be wrong. I mean, I'm not an economic theorist, and honestly, I don't really understand how the economy works. I don't even check my own bank account balance very often. I make the videos, I swipe the card.
You hear that? She's talking a lot about economics and efficiency and happiness levels and income levels and wealth inequality and shit. Then she admits that she doesn't know anything about economics.
So look, if I'm wrong and capitalism is good actually, just leave a comment and I'll be happy to be proven wrong. But before you do that, let's
Capitalism's wonderful.
get some of the more obvious objections out of the way.
Income inequality exists because not everyone does the same jobs. Some people work harder than others, and those people deserve to make more money.
Well, sweatshop workers work really hard and they barely make any money at all. And a lot of
And she has a point here. A lot of conservatives try to defend capitalism like this. Like, oh, if you just work hard. Well, I could go to the Mojave Desert and dig trenches for 15 hours a day in the fucking sun. But if it's not producing a value to anyone that's willing to trade money for it, then I'm just wasting my time. It's hard work. I'm busting my ass. But if I can't sell that, if I can't make that productivity valuable to someone who wants to pay for it, then who cares? Now you compare that with someone who might sit in a laboratory all day, inventing the light bulb, inventing the iPhone, programming an app in an air-conditioned office. Okay, they're not doing as hard of back-breaking work, but they're probably producing better values that people are willing to pay a lot of money for. Also, as far as wealth inequality goes, there is nothing wrong with someone getting rich, getting wealthy, making millions, perhaps even billions of dollars through honest free trade.
people who work minimum wage have to work multiple jobs just to sustain themselves and their families. It's actually...
And I'm sure a lot of minimum wage workers today have a lot better lives than upper class people did decades, hundreds of years ago. I mean, again, what would you folks rather be J.D. Rockefeller in 1902, or would you rather be a $12 an hour McDonald's employee in 2020?
A ton of work, and they barely make enough money to survive.
But minimum wage workers are unskilled workers. Why would anyone become an innovator or medical researcher if they could make a good living as a janitor?
Well, janitorial work is pretty important, actually. Someone has to cook and clean, and I think people who do such necessary work deserve a decent living. But I also think a lot...
By what standard? You know, again, it goes back to this notion that, oh, because you exist, you're owed a certain standard of living. Nothing against custodial workers. They're really valuable, and I hope they get paid decently. But again, are they good at their job? What values are they producing? Keeping an office building clean, that's a valuable skill.
A lot of people would find janitorial work boring, and I think that the kind of personality
Some people might find janitorial work very rewarding, though.
that likes to innovate and invent often isn't driven mainly by profit anyway. Jonas Salk never patented his polio vaccine, even though he could have made millions of dollars from it, because he just cared about humanity, and he was driven
Well, and you know what? He made that discovery, and it's up to him to do what he wants with it.
by a purpose beyond
You know, as far as I'm concerned, if he wanted to sell that vaccine for, I don't know, $5 a pop and make millions of dollars, I'd say he deserves it. The guy's a hero.
personal profit. In fact,
But if he gets value and satisfaction out of giving it away for free, hey, good for him too.
In fact, a lot of great historical scientists were upper-class people who didn't need to work for a living at all, and were just driven by their own passion and curiosity.
So let me get this straight. You criticize capitalism and yet you yourself make money on the internet. Hypocrite much?
A few years ago, I was a broke philosophy graduate student, and when I criticized capitalism then, people used to say,
Why don't you stop whining and get a real job and earn a living? You just resent capitalism because you're too lazy to put in the work it takes to succeed.
so if people who are failing under capitalism can't criticize it because they're just resentful, and people who are succeeding under capitalism can't criticize it because they're hypocrites, then, according to you, is anyone allowed to criticize capitalism?
I mean, it's not wrong to criticize politics or economics or whatnot, but all of her criticisms are kind of dumb.
Capitalism may have problems, but it's the best economic system there is. You wouldn't want to live in Soviet Russia or Maoist China, would you?
Well, no, I wouldn't. Hello, I'm Tatiana Tankikova. I'm here to defend Stalin. Fuck off! Do svidaniya, fascist. So, granted, a lot of past communist regimes were shitty, but that doesn't mean that the current system is the best and final system for all time.
She's right. The current system is, again, a mixed economy. Elements of capitalism, elements of socialism, elements of fascism.
My approach to this topic is not to try to resurrect Soviet communism or anything like that, but rather to identify problems with the current system that seem to cause unhappiness and instability.
Okay, but I like stuff.
I like stuff too. I think a lot of people have this instinctive fear that if capitalism goes, so does everything we love.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think of communism in particular, I think of austerity, scarcity, conformity, undrinkable victory gin, the end of fashion, all art required to be propaganda, just an all-around nightmare situation for a person of my persuasion. And it's not for no reason at all that I have these anxieties, since there was an aspect of that to some past communist societies. But the stuff I'm worried about, booze, makeup, art, baths, these things existed long before capitalism, and they'll exist long after it.
They were made better because of capitalism.
Different types of people will have different things they're concerned about. Straight guys will be like, will there be video games after capitalism? Oh god! And yeah, there will be.
Probably not. Probably not good ones.
Tetris is a Soviet game, and it's one of the best games of the 80s.
Yeah, and it was played on consoles made in more capitalist societies like Japan and America.
some of the stuff we like.
Greedy corporations like Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft and Apple making it possible for people to play Tetris.
It could probably even be improved if it were liberated from capitalist pressures. I mean, look what capitalism and the pressure to turn a profit has done to movies. The last time I was reading
A lot of good movies. A lot of shitty movies too, but hey.
the only book I've ever read, Ways of Seeing by John Berger, I noticed this description of glamour in the context of advertising. Its promise is not of pleasure, but of happiness. Happiness as judged from the outside by others. The happiness of being envied is glamour.
Well, again, you don't get happiness by being envied by others. You get happiness by earning self-esteem by your own standards.
It's still kind of attacked because glamour is very important to us. And by us, I mean the gays. The L's, the G's, the B's, the T's, and all those filthy cues. But isn't it kind of true that, at least in advertising, the function of glamour is to provoke...
I mean, does ContraPoints look like someone who would be happier if more people envied her?
feelings of envy and inadequacy in the beholder in the service of selling you shit. But the advertising function, I think, is an appropriation of glamour, not something essential to it. And maybe glamour would actually be liberated if it weren't constantly conflated with advertising. So I guess my message to socialists of the world is that Actually, stuff is good. Glamour is good. Video games are good. Luxury is good.
Baths are good. I mean,
Hell yeah.
even gold
Is good if you don't abuse it horribly. You know, the most offensive thing about the golden pizza is ultimately that the $2 pizza is actually better. The golden pizza is an affront not just to the people whose medical bills it could have paid, but it's an affront to gustatory pleasure itself. So I guess my final take here is, actually, champagne socialism is good. But I'm
No socialism is
not
good.
talking about the champagne classes becoming socialist. I'm talking about redistributing the goddamn champagne. Alright, now that I've gotten these objections out of the way, I'm finally ready to get started. Part 1, which you've all been waiting for. How to end capitalism once and for all. Well, I don't know. Who do you
So again, she's not an expert on economics, and she doesn't have any answers on how to end capitalism.
people think I am? I'm a socially conscious YouTube entertainer, not transsexual Gandhi. I mean, according to Marxism, we can't just start the revolution whenever we feel like it. Capitalism has to fail, and that'll bring about the conditions that make revolution inevitable. So I guess we just try to relax and wait for that to happen. Sure, it's bound to happen any day now. You know, maybe we should do something in the meantime. So, I don't know, I guess vote Labor, tweet radically, try to eat more vegetables, try not to be manipulated into waging war against other downtrodden people, and can we please not hand more power to the absolute worst dingbats our society has on offer? No voting, smashing. Well, you know what? Since she's the one with the plan, apparently, I guess just do whatever she says. Tabby, why don't you go take a bath? Meow. Good kitty. Don't close the door. Dear comrades, the Central Cat Girl Committee has determined that ContraPoints is, and always has been, counter-revolutionary bourgeois revisionism. The Department of Information has therefore replaced the remainder of this video with a tribute to the immortal science of tabbyism.
So at least ContraPoints seems honest enough to know that most of the alternatives to capitalism, especially from the intellectuals that she's read, like Lenin and Trotsky and Marx, are all a fucking nightmare. And she has no answers, and she admits that she really doesn't even know much about economics, and her main issues with capitalism are advertising, which I don't see a big deal with. And then there's the point about people hating their jobs and shitty jobs which exist in non-capitalist countries, so I don't really think that's really a valid point about capitalism. And sometimes people spend a lot of money on stupid shit like golden pizzas, which, yeah, that might happen in a free society. People might spend a lot of money on stupid shit, and ultimately you just have to deal with it, because as long as they're not violating yours or anyone else's rights, they have every right to make dumb decisions, and hopefully they learn from it. Bottom line, contrary to ContraPoints, capitalism kicks ass.